Hey there, welcome back to the show. As we just passed Juneteenth, we know this is a very heavy topic, but an important one. How do we continue to work to end racism? Well, one way might be to start talking to our kids about these issues a little more clearly. My executive producer, Joseph Setner, he's with me because he just recently spoke with the author of a new book covering this very topic.
Yeah, good morning, Amity. That's right. Last week, I spoke with the author of the popular book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and he's actually coming to Seattle later this week for an event at Town Hall. Dr. Ibram X. Kendi is now out with a new book called How to Raise an Anti-Racist, and he shared with me what he hopes parents across the country will hopefully consider thinking about. You have a new book out, but your previous book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, I think really resonated with a lot of readers. So was the next logical step, obviously, to write How to Raise an Anti-Racist?
So it actually wasn't. That wasn't the plan. I actually was planning on writing a narrative history of racist policies. But the more readers of How to Be an Anti-Racist consumed it and reflected on it, the more they were asking me, okay, how do I talk to my kids about this? Like, I want to raise my kids to be anti-racist. And ironically, it was a question that I was asking myself as being a father, and I've been thinking about that for years. And so it all sort of came together with, maybe I should do this book.
So I think the term anti-racist has some nuance to it that maybe people haven't fully thought about. So could you just briefly describe, what does the term anti-racism mean?
Well, we can understand anti-racist in three ways: as an idea of racial equality, that the racial groups is equals; a policy, it's an anti-racist policy is creating or leading to equity between groups or justice between groups; or even a person who is expressing an anti-racist idea of equality or supporting policies that are equitable. And anti-racism, which is more structural, is trying to create institutions and communities that have these policies and ideas.
So unfortunately, we have TV time constraints, and it's an extremely complex issue. But how would you generally say to go about raising an anti-racist child?
Well, I think first, we have to recognize as teachers and parents that our kids are seeing race, they're seeing racial inequality, they're trying to figure out why, particularly brown and Black people are on the poor end of society. They're hearing messages that dark is ugly and light is beautiful. So I think we have to first start there of what literally our children are experiencing and disrupt that, right? Allow them to teach them that, we shouldn't be attaching positive or negative characteristics to any skin color, that the problem is bad rules, not bad people, that we should respect differences in colors and cultures.
So I was reading about your new book, How to Raise an Anti-Racist, and I know a lot of what you write about came from your own lived experience, but I was curious, did your views on race and racism change at all after becoming a dad?
Yes. I think the biggest viewpoint that I had is a viewpoint that I think many parents had and have, which is, I just want to keep my daughter as far away from this as possible. I don't want to talk to her about race and racism. It's toxic. I want to keep her away from it. But then I realized that there's no escaping it, unfortunately. And our children especially are the most vulnerable, to these negative and bad and biased messages. And the way we protect them from internalizing these messages is giving them the ability to identify it. And the way they identify it is by us talking to them about this. Like a white teenage boy can identify white supremacist ideology so that when somebody tries to recruit him online, he could say, no, that's not for me.
That makes a lot of sense. I think out here in Seattle, we're pretty progressive out here on the West Coast. Maybe people here think racism isn't as big of an issue as it is in other parts of the country. But what would you say to someone who thinks that?
The primary way we determine whether racism exists is whether there's racial disparities and inequities. And last I checked, there were racial disparities and inequities, in the Northwest, just as there is in progressive Boston and in New England, right? And so I don't think we should look away from those disparities because that's what's showing us racism.
We just marked Juneteenth over the weekend. What would you hope people think about as we mark this day? What should people be thinking about?
Juneteenth was really a celebration, and for me, of a time when Black people freed themselves from slavery with a whole host of allies. And what reason why that sort of resonates with me today is because everyone who is facing forms of racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia, they're going to lead their own struggle, but they're also going to need allies. And the way we create sort of freedom for the peoples in our communities who are facing forms of oppression is support them and ally with them, and then collectively work together to create a just, more equitable and free republic.
And just a reminder, Dr. Kendi will be in Seattle on Thursday, June 23rd at Town Hall Seattle. We've got a link to tickets on our website.